The wind howled through the ancient city of Alexandria, sweeping the cobblestone streets and causing the fluttering of dim lantern lights. It was a city of knowledge, of great thinkers and scholars, yet beneath its veil of enlightenment, dark secrets were buried, secrets that would never see the light of day. Amara stood in the shadows of a courtyard, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the voices of the men inside the stone walls, the murmurs of discussions, and the hurried footsteps of those who carried out the work that no one spoke of. She had heard the rumors, the whispers of women who had come to these very chambers, only to leave changed, broken, or not at all. She didn't want to be here. She was a healer by trade, one who worked with herbs and potions, hands stained with the knowledge of the earth's remedies. But when her sister Lila had fallen gravely ill, fevered and wasting away in her bed, Amara had heard the name of the physician they all feared, Dr. Zahar, the great physician of Alexandria, whose cures were said to be nothing short of miraculous. But at what cost? The price, as Amara had come to realize, was not money or even life. It was something much worse. Her sister had begged for help. Amara's only choice was to venture to the heart of Alexandria's medical world, to the great temple of healing where Zahar practiced. His fame spread like wildfire, with whispers of his methods that some called genius, others called barbaric. In her desperation, Amara had put her faith in the doctor. But now, standing before the gates of his temple, she questioned her decision. The temple's marble columns towered above her, their smooth surfaces worn from centuries of use. She could see the faint glow of oil lamps through the cracks in the door. The air smelled faintly of burning incense and something else, something medicinal, acrid. She hesitated. Every instinct in her screamed to turn and flee, to find another way to save her sister. But she had already made the journey too far. She stepped forward, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold iron of the door. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with the stench of antiseptic and something darker, something unsettling. Amara was led by a young assistant, a man whose eyes darted nervously as he led her through the labyrinth of hallways. The walls were adorned with strange symbols and crude depictions of the human body. It was clear that this was no ordinary healing temple. It was a place where both science and sorcery intertwined. Finally, they arrived at a chamber at the back of the building. The assistant knocked twice before entering. Inside, Dr. Zahar sat at a stone table, scribbling notes onto parchment, his dark eyes focused on the work before him. He didn't look up as Amara entered. His reputation preceded him. But in this moment, Amara's heart quickened for reasons that went beyond mere fear. "Ah, the healer's sister," Zahar said in a voice that was both cold and captivating, his gaze still fixed on his work. "I wondered when you would arrive. Your sister's condition is dire. She is but a breath away from death." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "Please," she said, her voice cracking with desperation, "save her." Zahar finally looked up, his eyes piercing. There was no warmth in them, only a calculating coldness. "I can save her. I have saved many," he said, standing and walking to a shelf lined with jars and vials, each containing strange liquids and powders. "But the price for such knowledge is not easily paid, for my work is beyond what most can comprehend." Amara swallowed hard. "I'll pay whatever it takes. Please, I just want her to survive." Dr. Zahar's lips curled into a faint smile. "Survival, my dear, is not the question. The real question is, can you bear the cost of what you are asking?" Amara had heard the rumors, the experiments, the women who had been subjects of Zahar's curious and often twisted methods. There were tales of women who had been subjected to painful procedures, of surgery performed without anesthesia, of strange potions that altered the very fabric of their bodies. It was said that Zahar was obsessed with unlocking the mysteries of the female body, using it as a canvas for his radical theories. But she had no choice. She had heard of the miraculous recoveries too. She had to believe that Zahar could save Lila. "I will bear any cost," she said, her voice firm, despite the rising panic in her chest. "Save my sister." Zahar's smile widened, and he turned to the assistant. "Prepare the table," he ordered. "We begin." As the assistant moved quickly to prepare the chamber for the procedure, Amara's mind raced. What was this cost she was speaking of? What was she about to witness? A cold dread began to settle in her gut. She had come seeking a cure, but now she felt as though she were stepping into a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. She had seen the way Zahar had looked at her, the same way he looked at the women who had come before her. It was not the gaze of a healer, but a man who viewed his subjects as little more than vessels to be experimented upon. Amara's hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. She had to be strong for Lila, but deep down, she wondered if she was walking into a trap from which there would be no escape. The assistant returned with a metal tray, on which rested several sharp instruments, their edges gleaming in the dim light. The smell of bitter herbs filled the air. "Lay her on the table," Zahar instructed. Amara turned toward her sister, who had been brought into the room, pale and weak, her body trembling with fever. Lila's eyes fluttered open for a moment, confusion flickering across her face. "Sister," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amara rushed to her side, her heart breaking. "It's all right, Lila. You'll be fine. Dr. Zahar will help you." Lila's hand reached out weakly, and Amara took it in hers, holding on as though her own life depended on it. The doctor's figure loomed above them, his shadow stretching long across the stone floor. As Zahar prepared his instruments, Amara braced herself. Whatever was to come, there was no turning back now. The chamber grew silent, save for the soft click of metal against metal. And then, with a cold smile, Zahar spoke again. "Let us begin." Amara's heart raced as she watched Dr. Zahar prepare his instruments. The harsh clink of metal on stone filled the silence between them, punctuated only by Lila's soft, labored breathing. Despite the assurances she had given her sister, Amara's stomach twisted in knots. She tried to steady her mind, but the sickening feeling in her gut only grew stronger with each passing moment. Lila's hand tightened in hers. "Amara, what's happening?" Her voice was weak, a distant echo of the vibrant sister Amara had known. "Where are we?" Amara pressed her sister's hand to her cheek, forcing a smile that she didn't feel. "It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine, I promise. Dr. Zahar is the best healer in all of Alexandria. He'll fix you." But even as she said the words, a part of her knew they were hollow. No healer in the world could restore what was already broken. And yet, there she stood, desperate enough to place her faith in the hands of a man who trafficked in secrets and unspoken horrors. Dr. Zahar finally spoke, his voice as cold and clinical as the instruments he wielded. "We will begin with a purge, to cleanse her body of the toxins that have caused this fever." He turned toward the assistant, a young man who stood in the corner of the room with his eyes cast downward. "Prepare the herbal infusion." The assistant moved quickly, collecting vials from the shelves and mixing them with a practiced hand. Amara watched in silence, her eyes fixed on the brewing concoction. She didn't know what it was, but the way Zahar handled it, the careful reverence with which he mixed the ingredients, made her uneasy. "Drink," Zahar ordered, handing the vial to Amara. It was dark in color, almost black, and swirled with streaks of red. There was no scent, just the faintest metallic tang that lingered in the air. Amara's gaze flicked between the vial and her sister's pale face. Lila's eyes were closed now, her body trembling. "Lila, you need to drink this," Amara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It will help." Lila's eyelids fluttered open. "What is it?" she asked, her voice shaky. It will help your fever, Amara replied. It will make you better. Her sister didn't argue. She didn't have the strength. She opened her mouth, and Amara gently tipped the vial to her lips. Lila drank without protest, swallowing the bitter liquid. Amara held her breath, watching her sister's face for any sign of relief. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if on cue, Lila's body stiffened. Her eyes flew open, wide with terror. A deep gasp escaped her lips, and she lurched forward, her chest heaving with violent coughs. Her hands gripped the stone table, as if trying to hold herself together. Amara recoiled, her heart pounding in her chest. "What did you do to her?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Zahar did not flinch. The purge is taking effect. Her body must expel the toxins, and sometimes the reaction is violent. But Amara could see the truth in her sister's eyes. This was no cure. This was agony. Lila's body bucked, her mouth open in a silent scream as sweat poured from her forehead. Her skin was flushed with fever, but it was a different kind of heat now, one that radiated with a sickening intensity. Amara tried to hold her sister's trembling hand, but it was slick with sweat, impossible to grasp. Dr. Zahar turned toward the assistant. "Increase the dosage." "No!" Amara cried, her voice desperate. She grabbed the vial from the table and threw it across the room. It shattered on the stone floor, sending glass shards skittering in all directions. "Stop. This is not what she needs." Zahar raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "You have no understanding of what is required. Healer, you are not here for your sister's comfort. You are here to watch. This is the price of knowledge." Amara's breath hitched. What did he mean by that? What was he doing to her sister? She looked down at Lila, who was now writhing in pain. Her face was a twisted mass of agony, her eyes wide with terror. "Please," Amara whispered, tears welling up. "Please stop. This isn't the way." But it was too late. The assistant moved quickly, drawing a sharp instrument from the table and stepping toward Lila. The doctor's eyes followed, but there was no emotion in his gaze, just cold calculation. The assistant hovered over her sister, his hand steady as he positioned the blade. "What are you going to do?" Amara demanded, her voice rising in panic. Zahar's lips curled into a thin smile. "We are going to unlock the truth of her body, to understand the deepest recesses of the female form. She will be a vessel for knowledge, a subject of study." "No!" Amara screamed, stepping forward. She moved to grab the assistant's arm, but Zahar's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Stay back," he ordered, his voice low and dangerous. "You cannot stop what is necessary. You asked for my help. This is the price." Amara froze, the words crashing over her like a wave. The price. She had been so desperate, so willing to believe in the miracle of this place. But now she saw the truth. The price was not just her sister's body. It was her soul, too. The price was the dehumanization of every woman who had entered these chambers, whose suffering was dismissed as mere fodder for the doctor's experiments. Her heart shattered as she realized the cost of her faith in this place. The truth was worse than she had imagined. Lila's voice, hoarse and broken, reached her ears. "Amara, help me." Amara's breath caught. She could not let this continue. She could not allow her sister to be nothing more than an object of study. Without thinking, she lunged to the assistant's arm, knocking the blade from his hand. It clattered to the floor, and the assistant took a step back, surprised by her sudden defiance. "Amara," Lila whispered weakly. "What's happening to me?" Amara could only hold her sister's trembling hand, tears streaming down her face. She had come here to save her, but now she understood. There was no salvation in this place, not for her sister, and not for any woman who dared step into the doctor's lair. "I'm so sorry," Amara whispered, the words a prayer as she pulled Lila into her arms, away from the horrors that threatened to consume her. But as they stumbled toward the door, Amara felt the doctor's gaze on them, a cold, unrelenting stare that promised the pursuit of knowledge at any cost, even if it meant the destruction of the very souls who walked through his doors. Amara and Lila stumbled through the cold, dark hallways of Dr. Zahar's temple, their hearts racing in unison, breath ragged. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the stone walls, like the pounding of a drum, but every step felt heavier than the last. Amara could feel her sister's weak body leaning on her, her fragile frame trembling with each movement. The fever was still burning inside her. She could feel the heat radiating from her skin, as though she were a furnace struggling to keep itself together. The temple felt alive with malice, the very air thick with unseen eyes. Amara glanced over her shoulder, almost expecting the door to burst open behind them. For Zahar to come rushing after them with his cutting instruments, his cold eyes, his detached, calculating mind. But the hallway remained empty, the silence oppressive. Amara. Lila's voice was little more than a whisper, the pain in her words sharp enough to make Amara flinch. What happened back there? Amara swallowed hard, her throat dry. I don't know what he was doing, but it wasn't healing. It was... She struggled to find the words, the horror of what they had just witnessed still too fresh in her mind. It was torture. Lila's breath caught, and she gasped softly. Torture? Yes, Amara said, her voice shaking with mixture of rage and fear. Torture under the guise of science. He's not a healer, Lila. He's a monster, a man obsessed with dissecting and controlling the human body, especially the female body. He doesn't care about us, about you. He only cares about his experiments. But why? Lila's voice was so weak, so fragile. Why would anyone do such things? Amara didn't have an answer. She had no explanation for the cruelty they had just endured. The method Zahar used, so precise, so calculated, made her stomach churn. The woman on the table, the one who had been there before them, had left the room in such a state of shock. Amara still couldn't forget the look in her eyes, the look of someone who had been irreparably broken, whose very soul had been stripped away. Lila's feverish hand tightened around hers, bringing her back to present. Amara, we need to get out of here. Yes, we do. Amara's voice was filled with determination now. There was no question. She would not let her sister stay another moment in that hellish place. But as they neared the exit, the cold stone door loomed larger, and the bitter realization hit her. There was nowhere safe left. Alexandria, with all its glory, was a city of secrets and power, and the healing temple where they stood was a place of influence and fear. The door creaked open behind them, and Amara spun around. But instead of Zahar, it was a young assistant, the one who had prepared the purge for Lila, who appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of apprehension. You need to leave, he said, his voice hushed and urgent. You should have never come here. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Amara's heart skipped a beat. You work for him? The assistant nodded, his eyes shifting nervously. I'm a student. I didn't know it would be like this. I thought I was learning something noble. But now, I see. I see the truth. Zahar isn't a healer. He's a monster. Amara's mind raced. She knew she should feel distrust for him. He had been part of the machine, the one who had assisted Zahar in his experiments. But there was something in his voice that gave her pause, something that hinted at remorse. We have to get out of here, the assistant continued, stepping forward with a glance over his shoulder. Now, Zahar won't stop until he has what he wants. If he knows you've taken your sister, he'll come after you. He'll hunt you down. Amara's eyes narrowed. What does he want with my sister? He wants knowledge. The assistant's face twisted with discomfort. He wants to understand the female body at its deepest, most primal level, the way it works, the way it breaks. He believes that women hold the key to immortality, that we are vessels for a power he can unlock if he pushes far enough, goes deep enough. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The words were like a thunderclap, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. "But he's wrong," the assistant said, his voice cracking. "You don't understand. He's beyond reason. He believes that if he can reach the core of a woman's being, physically and mentally, he can unlock eternal life. That the human body, particularly the female body, holds the secret to immortality." Amara staggered back, her mind spinning. "He's insane." "Yes," the assistant whispered, looking down in shame. "And I helped him. I thought I could change him. I thought I could learn and teach him the right way. But I can't. I can't be part of this anymore." Lila's feverish body leaned into Amara, and she glanced back toward the exit, her legs trembling beneath her. She had to get her sister out. But the assistant's words weighed heavily on her mind. "Is there a way out?" she asked, voice tight. The assistant nodded, eyes darting nervously around the hallway. "The back exit. It leads into the alley behind the temple. But you have to move fast. You have to go now, or it'll be too late." Amara hesitated for only a moment, her mind racing with thoughts of what could happen next. Zahar would not let them go easily. He would send his men after them. He would never allow them to escape, especially now that he had learned they had seen too much. But Amara's gaze dropped to Lila, who was slipping in and out of consciousness. She could not leave her behind, not after everything they had endured. With a nod, she took her sister's hand firmly and turned toward the back exit. The assistant followed them quietly, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting Zahar's cold gaze to fall upon them at any moment. They moved quickly through the narrow corridors, their footsteps muffled by the thick stone walls. Amara's heart pounded in her chest, and every shadow seemed to whisper the dangers that lay ahead. Finally, they reached the back door. The assistant opened it cautiously, revealing a dimly lit alleyway behind the temple. The cool night air hit Amara's face like a splash of water, but she didn't pause. She urged Lila forward, every step bringing them closer to freedom. But the moment they stepped into the alley, they heard a sound that froze Amara's blood. Footsteps, quick, measured, and purposeful, echoing down the stone corridor. Zahar was coming. Amara's heart raced as she looked at the assistant, her eyes wide with panic. "We have to move faster," she hissed, pulling Lila forward. The alley was narrow and dark, a maze of crumbling stone and forgotten paths. But ahead, she could see the faint glow of a distant lantern, a sign of escape, of safety. She had to reach it. She had to get Lila out of here. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. And then, from the darkness, Zahar's voice rang out like the clang of a hammer. "Amara, you cannot escape what has already begun." The alley seemed to stretch endlessly before them, the shadows shifting with every step. Amara's breath came in sharp gasps, her heart thundering in her chest as she pulled Lila along, her sister's feverish form barely able to keep up. Every step felt as if they were being hunted. And with every glance behind, the footsteps grew closer, colder. Zahar's voice echoed from the darkness, cutting through the night air like a blade. "Amara, you cannot outrun destiny. It's already written in your blood." His words twisted inside her like a knot of dread. She didn't know if he meant to warn her or to threaten her, but the very tone of his voice, the calm, detached certainty, made her skin crawl. Zahar didn't see her as a person. He didn't see her sister as a person. To him, they were nothing more than pawns in a sickening game, experiments to be dissected and studied, the cost of knowledge paid with their suffering. The alley narrowed, the walls closing in on them, as if the city itself were conspiring to trap them. The lantern light ahead grew fainter, flickering like a dying star. Amara's muscles burned with exhaustion, but she couldn't afford to stop. She couldn't afford to slow down. Not now. Lila, she whispered, her voice trembling. Hold on. Just a little longer. We're almost there. Lila's head lolled on her shoulder. Her body slacked with fever and exhaustion. Her breathing was shallow, labored. Her sister's delicate form was like a heavy weight against her. But Amara refused to stop. She had to get her sister out. She had to protect her from whatever madness Zahar was plotting. But the alley was not as empty as it seemed. A shadow moved ahead of them, and before Amara could react, two figures stepped into their path, figures that moved with unnerving precision. The flickering lantern light revealed their faces. Two of Zahar's men, tall and broad-shouldered, their expressions empty and unfeeling. The moment they saw Amara and Lila, their eyes narrowed in recognition. Amara's breath hitched in her throat. They had been cornered. One of the men reached into his cloak and pulled out a long, slender blade, a knife that glinted in the dim light. "You shouldn't have left Amara," he said, his voice low and cold. "The doctor is not a man who likes to be defied." The other man stepped forward, blocking the path completely. "You're coming back with us." "Not a chance." Amara spat, her eyes flashing with defiance. She could feel the weight of her sister in her arms, but there was no time for hesitation. She had no weapon, no means of defense, only her determination and the fear that had propelled her this far. Lila stirred slightly, her weak eyes flickering open. Amara, her voice was barely audible, filled with pain. "Please." Amara turned her gaze toward her sister, her heart breaking. She couldn't let this happen. She couldn't let these men drag them back into Zahar's hell. With a strength born of desperation, Amara moved swiftly, pushing Lila behind her as she raised her hands. She didn't know what she planned to do, only that she would not let them take her sister. "You'll have to kill me first," she said, her voice raw and resolute. She didn't care about her own safety anymore. She didn't care about anything except protecting Lila from the horrors Zahar had planned for her. The two men shared a brief, unreadable glance. Then, without warning, the first man lunged forward, his knife flashing in the dim light. Amara barely had time to react. She stepped back, her body instinctively moving away from the blade, but the man was fast, too fast. He reached out, grabbing her wrist and twisting it painfully. Lila cried out in terror, her fragile voice a sharp cry in the night. "Let go of her!" Amara shouted, struggling against the man's iron grip. The second man advanced, his hand tightening around his own weapon as he moved to restrain her. But before either of them could act, a loud, piercing voice rang out from the darkness. "Stop!" Amara froze, the command slicing through the air like a sudden gust of wind. The two men hesitated, looking toward the source of the voice. Emerging from the shadows, as if conjured by the very darkness, was Zahar himself. His figure was tall and imposing, the shadows clinging to him like a shroud. His face was calm, almost serene, but his eyes were the eyes of a predator. "Release them," Zahar said, his voice smooth and cold. For a moment, the men stood frozen, uncertainty flashing in their eyes. But under Zahar's unyielding gaze, they slowly obeyed, stepping back and lowering their weapons. The moment the pressure on her wrist eased, Amara yanked her arm free, moving swiftly to Lila's side, her body instinctively protecting her sister. Zahar stepped forward, his gaze lingering on the two women, his lips curling into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I see you decided to try your luck outside the temple," he said, his voice like a whisper that sent chills down Amara's spine. "But you cannot escape what is already within you." Amara's hands clenched into fists. "I won't let you do this to her. You won't use her for your twisted experiments." Zahar's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it, only the chilling certainty of someone who had already won. It's already too late for her. Amara, the process has begun. You cannot stop it now. She is mine. Amara's breath caught. What have you done to her? She demanded, her voice breaking. Tell me what you've done to her. Zahar's eyes gleamed with a mixture of triumph and cruelty. What I've done to her is the beginning of something much greater than either of you can understand. I've unlocked the key to immortality, and it lies within her. No! Amara's voice trembled with a desperate, primal fear. You're lying. This isn't healing. This is madness. You see, Amara, Zahar continued, taking another slow step forward. The human body is not simply a vessel. It is the answer to every question. It holds the secret of life itself, the power to transcend death. He reached out, his fingers brushing against Lila's forehead, as though she were nothing more than an object to be examined. She will be the vessel of that knowledge. A dark realization crashed over Amara like a wave. Zahar's experiments had never been about curing disease. They had never been about helping people. He had used the women who came to him, women like Lila, as nothing more than instruments for his own twisted thirst for knowledge, for power. They were the price, the cost of unlocking a secret that should never be unearthed. No, Amara cried, stepping in front of her sister. You'll never have her. I will never let you take her. But Zahar only laughed softly, the sound low and mocking. You cannot protect her forever. Amara, we all have a price to pay. Even you. Amara's mind raced. She had to act now, or everything they had fought for would be lost. But she knew one thing for certain. Zahar was not going to stop. He would never stop. Her eyes locked with Lila's, and in that moment, Amara knew what had to be done. She could not let her sister suffer any longer. Not for Zahar, not for the madness that had consumed the city's most brilliant minds. She had to save her, no matter the cost. With a final, resolute breath, Amara turned to face the monster who had caused them so much pain. And then, in the stillness of the alley, the fight for freedom and survival began. The city of Alexandria never forgot the legend of Amara and Lila, sisters who had defied the powerful physician Dr. Zahar, who had sought to unravel the very fabric of human existence in his quest for immortality. Their names were whispered in the streets, in the marketplaces, and in the halls of the great library, not as victims but as survivors, as symbols of resistance against the forces that sought to control the sacred mysteries of life itself. But the cost of their freedom was steep, and the path they took was one paved with unimaginable sacrifices. After the confrontation in the alley, the two women disappeared from the city. Their fates, much like the legend surrounding them, became clouded in mystery. Some said they had sailed away into the vast Mediterranean, seeking refuge in distant lands where Zahar's influence could not reach. Others claimed they had retreated into the forgotten corners of Alexandria, hiding from those who would still seek to use them as tools for power. But one thing was certain, Amara and Lila were never seen again. As for Dr. Zahar, his pursuit of knowledge continued, but his methods became more erratic, his obsession with the female body more insidious. Without Amara's interference, he began to focus his experiments on other subjects, capturing women from the streets of Alexandria, offering them the same false hope of healing that he had once promised. His methods became more cruel, more horrific, as he sought to unlock the secrets of life and death. But his experiments, fueled by arrogance and madness, ultimately led to his downfall. In the end, Dr. Zahar's obsession destroyed him. His experiments, never fully completed, took a toll on his mind and body. His final days were spent in isolation, surrounded by the empty ruins of his temple, his notes, and the remnants of the women he had used. He died alone, a man who had chased immortality and lost his soul in the process. But even in his ruin, the echoes of his actions reverberated through Alexandria, through the world of healing and medicine. His name would forever be tied to the dark history of the city, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition, of the price that must be paid when one seeks to control the natural order. As for the women he had tried to control, they became a quiet symbol of resistance, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of overwhelming darkness. Amara, in her desperation to save her sister, had become something more than a healer. She had become a protector, a warrior for those who had no voice, for those who would be torn apart by the pursuit of knowledge at any cost. And Lila, though forever marked by the horrors she had endured, had survived. She was free from Zahar's twisted grasp, her body scarred but unbroken. She would never forget the sacrifices her sister had made, nor the price they had both paid for their freedom. But together, they had learned the most powerful lesson of all, that the true power of a person, of a woman, lay not in the body, but in the mind, in the spirit, and in the strength to resist the forces that sought to control them. Years later, when the whispers of Zahar's temple had faded into myth, Amara and Lila were remembered not for their suffering, but for their strength. They were remembered as sisters who had fought for each other, and in doing so had shown the world that some knowledge, no matter how tempting, comes at a price that no one should ever be willing to pay. The price of immortality, they learned too late, was not just a matter of life or death. It was a matter of the soul. And some things, no matter how precious, were never meant to be uncovered. In the pursuit of knowledge and power, there are lines that should never be crossed. The body may be fragile, but the human spirit is resilient. We must never lose sight of our humanity, even when faced with the temptation of immortality or the promise of ultimate control. True power lies not in domination, but in the strength to protect what is sacred and in the courage to resist those who exploit it.